there's just a big gap between that starting process and where they need to be and what they need.
I've been overusing Bezos' quote lately. As he says, you should be stubborn on vision but flexible on details.
Yeah. I also run a team out of India. I know a lot of folks who have teams in Mexico, South America, Argentina. Philippines is growing up a lot for like administrative work, design work, video editing work. A bunch of folks are tapping talent pools over there.
Exactly, and they are able to deliver and over-deliver most of the times. So that's something that we were able to build as a brand, and we're going to grow continuously. Having specific know-how that can be translated into intellectual property, that as well.
What do you want to do over the next 3 to 5 years? How do you think about planning for your agency and then follow on? Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. Today we have on Cadlin. He's been a founder of various companies like Deliver Me and Notifier app. You're a podcast host at your podcast called A Day in the Future. You're a co-founder and advisor at a company called Nutriento. And your main gig, which is Linify, you're co-founder and CEO at. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Can you just briefly talk about what you're trying to do at Linify and what your mission is?
So our mission statement is simplifying life through innovation. That's what Linify comes from. Life, innovation, simplify.
Got it.
Yeah. Now, what I personally do is make sure we have a unique value add to how we create products, digital products, from idea to product market fit. And this translates into having a unique validation process, for example, that we use, creating partnerships with relevant stakeholders like accelerators, VCs, associations that are meant to be engaged at that point of the journey for a startup or a spin-off sometimes. So that's what I focus most.
Got it.
Yeah.
You mentioned product market fit. I always like to ask my guests, what do you think product market fit is and how do you define that?
So you can either go in terms of metrics, and there's this methodology used by the founder of Superhuman, the 40% rule. Yeah, so you know about it. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Or you just feel it. You just feel it. And a concrete example would be when you get surprised of hearing about your product from someone that you have no idea who it is.
Yeah.
And you've never tried to market to that person, but somehow they found about your product because it's so damn good. So, yeah.
Nice. So at Linify, you're working with a lot of folks, taking their ideas to market, validating, figuring out PMF, GTM for them, go to market for them. What do you think is one problem that a lot of the folks you work with tend to repeat over and over again? And what I'm trying to get at is I work with a lot of folks, try to go 0 to 1 with them as well. And I feel like there's a big misconception with, hey, here's what my idea is, here's what I want to build, and here's how long it should take. There's just a big gap between that starting process and where they need to be and what they need. And so you've worked with a bunch of folks. What do you think is one, or not even one, a couple things that they seem to get traditionally very wrong?
Well, trying to launch the perfect thing from the beginning, that's the biggest pitfall, because that comes with costs, with energy, with time spent in a direction that you might believe is the right one, and there's a very small chance that it actually is,
100%.
because you will need to pivot. I've never heard about a startup that found the right recipe from the beginning. So you just might as well start faster. Start with a version that includes the key elements that are able to deliver your unique value proposition in the market, and go from there. And sometimes, and I think that's a trait that's good to have as a founder, sometimes they believe too much in their product.
100%.
What I recommend is believing in your vision, and how you get there, it's going to change.
100%.
I've been overusing Bezos' quote lately. as he says, you should be stubborn on vision but flexible on details. So that's
nice.
That's the approach.
What's your recommendation to someone listening who's has an idea, wants to validate? How should they go about structuring that idea, trying to get to essential validation steps to figure out what does your product look like? What's your go-to framework, method, or just overall high-level approach?
So I recommend like a list of methodologies that you should go through, but what we use is a 5-step process. And it starts by understanding what problem are you solving, a very clear problem statement with a corresponding target market. So that's important to start with, because the next step is understanding that market and going into lean market research, how I like to call it, because you're not going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars on it. You're just going to be spending tens of, not really thousands, but hundreds of hours of your own time into understanding what the market needs and how well their problem is currently solved by the competition. So that's what I would recommend. Diving deep into conversations, into surveys, into understanding the things that you do not know.
100%.
So yeah. After doing that, next step is refining a unique value proposition, something that has you need to have a very good and compelling answer on why would your target market choose to solve their problem through you instead of any other alternatives in the market, and then you start building.
So in that process, so you talk about problem statement, sort of ICP, target market, customer profile, target market, market research, and then the fourth point would be what's your unique value prop or unique selling prop, USP for that problem and solution.
Exactly, yeah.
At what point in this process do you have to restructure and start from the scratch? And so how on general, how many times does that happen? So I start out with problem statement A, ICP A, and I'm going and doing research, and maybe part of my problem statement is invalidated. Maybe my target market's not the correct target market. So how many times do you generally see folks going through that cycle and repetition before they get to the point where, okay, I've figured out all these 4 things and I'm ready to build V1?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the ones that haven't talked on their own before going into market research with the market, the ones that only had their idea for themselves and sort of like fantasized about it, they are the ones that usually invalidate even the problem. When they start out, because first you need to have a problem validation, and that's usually done through surveys. It's quantitatively. You need to be able to identify that it is a pain and the target market is willing to pay, at least the willing part initially, before you actually want to test out whether they would pay or not. So I'd say that the more time they've spent before on their own without going through a specific methodology and understanding the problem, the higher the chance of them not needing to go back to the drawing board for the problem validation part. Now, if they're confident that the problem is there, and usually you can, by the way they talk about the problem, you can already understand if they know if it's validated or not. Now, after that, going into the solution space, that's the next step in which it all starts with having a clear value proposition. And as I was saying, in the market research phase, you need to be able to identify what gap, what's that area in how the market is being served, where you can come in with something that's different and better, and usually needs to be 10 times better if you're a startup. So, yeah.
So in this process of validation, you talk a lot about doing surveys, reaching out to folks, getting in touch with customers. What's your go-to method to help a founder get in front of a lot of eyes? Because I talk to a lot of founders who, they're not the best sales folks. They don't have distribution. They're not big on social media. So how should someone who wants to build out a problem, have a problem that they want to try to solve, how should they get in front of potential customers? What's the recommendation there? Or what's your go-to strategy there?
Obviously, it really depends. If you're going to B2C or B2B, if you're going to sell to businesses, then For the easiest way to do it is to just go to industry conferences, but you need to get out there. You really need to talk. But if you have a clear script from the beginning, what you want to ask them, and you're really specific in your questions, they'll enjoy the conversation, and it will be a good conversation. They will also get to learn by telling you about their problems. That's what I would recommend. Industry conferences. If you're selling to businesses. If it's in the B2C space, it's pretty simple. You need to put a bit of investment into some vouchers that you're gonna. You just need to put something there.
Some incentive structure.
Or you can go into communities that have your ICP, be it online communities, I don't know, Facebook, Slack, whatever. And if you're passionate about the problem that you want to solve, I'm pretty confident that people will talk to you. Each time the founder was passionate about what they want to solve, people were willing to talk to them.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And they need to speak passionately about it.
100%. Yeah. I think one thing founders get a little wrong, or not even wrong, but they're just not super comfortable with, is the sales side, is the talking to customer side, is the explaining your problem, solution, value prop, because they're so hell-bent on their idea, their vision, and maybe they're technical, and someone listening on the other side is very outcome driven. They care about, how are you going to solve this problem for me? What's my benefit? They don't care about how, they don't care about your complex model or AI on the background. My take is that if you know how to simply convey, hey, you're losing 30% revenue here, you use my tool, here's what we do, you reduce that to 10%. Relatively simple way to understand. And then if you're hitting the right notes, if you're gauging the right problem, you can then explain how. But initially, being able to simplify what you're doing and how you're doing, I think is tough for a lot of founders.
Yeah, you're right. Well, so what I see is, so in what you were saying, I believe they already went a bit through the journey because they already have a product that they want to sell. Now, what I would recommend them, if they haven't started building anything yet and there's no reason in testing out whether it's needed in the market or not, is just going out there and talk to at least 10 people that fit your ICP. And start talking about the problem that you want to solve, so you can get a bit of their understanding and view of the space. Because that's how they're gonna be able to clearly communicate the 30% problem that you talked about. Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, so you had founded 2 different companies early on in your career. Can you briefly talk about what happened with them? Did you step down? Did you shut down the company? What was the outcome of those 2 companies?
So DeliverMe and Notifier, those were 2, I would say, products of Linify. So DeliverMe was the first product that Linify launched on the market. It was our first year of activity back when we were in university. So it was sort of like an Instacart, but for the Romanian market. First of this kind. So in 9 months, we did everything from being the builders, the coders, the designers, the customer support, the delivery man, business development, everything. So 9 months of intense, I would say, MBA, practical MBA experience. So what happened is that we generated some very loyal clients, I would say, but we needed additional capital in order to fund such development. Growth, we didn't even knew about private capital at that time, or we weren't that aware of it.
Makes sense.
And it wasn't such a big scene in Romania as well. So what we started to do is make sure we were sustainable financially, and we started to develop products for other people, startups that were from the US and Germany mostly. So that was the story of DeliverMe.
Got it.
Now the other one, Notifier. So it was an app that let you be the first one that finds out on a particular rent or apartment or car or whatever that's sold on the secondary market in Romania. So if you were looking for a specific car, Romanians do this a lot, like buying secondhand cars, and you had some clear specification, it's really important, if it's a good deal, to be the first that calls the seller. So that's what we did. We were quite successful there, I'd say, but it wasn't aligned with our passion for what we want to develop. We got to present it on the national IT whatever show that happens in Romania, and we got to have some again, pretty loyal customers, because even after we paused development, people would ask us like, "What's wrong? I want to get my notifications." Yeah.
What is one or two key learnings that you take away from building those two apps, eventually shutting them down, and what's something you take away from that experience?
So from the last one, it's the fact that you need to have a strong why and vision when you start out if you want to go the long road.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have a strong vision, we didn't have a strong why. It wasn't in line with our passion necessarily. It was more opportunistic, I would say. And for the first one, there were just too many learnings, to be honest. Like, that's when we actually got in touch with the business world. It was our first business experience. Overall, I'd say that it only proved to us that if you have a good team and a cohesive team, if you have a market that likes your product, anything can happen. Like, for me, it what gave me confidence that if you really want to do something, it's gonna happen. Now, you also need to be paying attention to how you're gonna fund it, and plan in advance. But I think that's something that we had to learn during the years.
Would you say you're more of a builder or more of an operator?
So I'd say builder and operators are pretty close to one another. So I'd say I'm more of a seller, a visionary, more than
Makes sense.
But I do like to get involved in the building space as well.
Right. Yeah. The reason I ask is, having built a couple companies and spun off ideas from 0 to 1, so you've experienced sort of the thrill of that journey of like seeing something hit, gain traction, make money, figure out scalability, go to market. Doing this at Linify for other folks, how often are you pulled towards, oh, that's a nice idea, let's try that, or that's a nice idea, let's build a product? Or are you very strict with, hey, we're going to deliver for clients and not really have experimentation of our own? Or how do you balance those two?
Yeah, so it's been a tough journey doing that, but now I think we had to gain maturity in focusing on the right things when it comes to the business, and having something that will be able to provide us with a big paycheck after the years. So I think we've minimized our budget and spent on ideas and R&D through the years, because we had some experiences that almost made us not exist anymore.
Yeah.
So right now, for example, we are allocating a strict budget of $50,000 for this year, for 2024, on internal ideas. And whether it is team allocation or marketing spend, whatever, that's the maximum. Cap, yeah.
And so does that force you to be more selective with what you try out? Or does it allow you to do a little bit on a lot of ideas and see what gains traction? So how do you think about that allocation? Because when you're more cost constrained, whether it's time and money or whether it's marketing spend, I'm guessing you're either only picking 2 or 3 banger ideas.
Yeah.
Or are you like trying a little bit of a lot of ideas?
So first of all, what it brings us is increased focus on the 100%. Core business and servicing our clients 100%. At the best. That's the main benefit. The second one would be focusing on only some the 1 or 2 ideas, and it cannot to max, like even having 2 ideas with that type of budget for a year, it can be a bit stretched. But being able to focus, I would say that's what I'd recommend. Yeah.
The reason I ask is there was a phase where I was like spinning off a lot of landing pages, a lot of ideas with my team. And if I didn't find traction, I would just shelf them, make it a case study. That's fine. I'm not too worried about that. I was having a conversation with someone in Austin, and they said, are you giving your ideas enough room to reach velocity? Because maybe you're on the right track, but you're stopping too soon. Maybe just a little more, try 1 or 2 more channels, and maybe they would gain traction. And I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if I am shutting them off too soon or not. But I think it also comes down to knowing, why do I want to build this? Yeah. Why do I like this idea? If I've lost faith in the idea or the thesis, or I think the thesis is invalidated, maybe it makes a little bit of money. Maybe it becomes a small lifestyle business or a lifestyle app. but I don't want to do that. Like I'm not trying to build lifestyle apps, right? So I'm fine shutting them down. But when someone asked me that question, I was like, maybe there's something there. Maybe we keep the ideas in a state where they're just on the shelf. There's a live demo working, and in a couple months, a year, if something clicks, and I'm like, oh, maybe let's pick that back up and try to see what happens. But I don't know if you have opinions on cutting them too short, because with the limited budget, are you allowing enough runway throughput for the idea to materialize? Or
how I would look at it, if you want to build a startup, a tech startup, something that's really disrupting the way we live, you need to have a strong why and vision from the start, and that will make you go on and on and on, and don't stop, because solutions are always there.
100%.
Just need to find them.
Yeah.
But in order to find them, you need to spend huge amounts of time, energy, stress, whatever.
Yeah.
But you'll find them. But if you look at opportunistic businesses that you can make, I would say that this would be more similar to looking at, like selling products on Amazon, like having that type of mentality and having a clear system on how you validate, invalidate, whether it's something that can bring you money or not. Having a very clear system on how you do that, it makes sense, because that's a system. It's a machine that you're using in order to generate revenue. But when it comes to building a startup, I'd look at a strong vision.
One thing that I wanted to just get your take on is, how do you think about shiny object syndrome? Do you often get pulled into directions where like, oh, that's a cool tech, that's a new idea, that's something nice that's happening. There's a bunch of AI happening nowadays, and there's a lot of cool AI applications. Are you very focused on what you're delivering for your clients, and how do you avoid sort of going towards the shiny object?
So it's very hard to those. That's why they're shiny, because they attract you and they capture your attention. But again, like through the years, I've managed to develop this focus ability. Like whatever new shiny object comes, first I look at the overall strategy or vision of our company. Now, does this shiny object help me make my overall company and goals shinier? If not, if it's only gonna distract it and not be a value add to what I'm already doing, I'm gonna look away, because there are always gonna be newer and shinier objects along the way. If it can compound on what I'm doing right now, I'm gonna definitely try to integrate and include that into what I'm doing. But the ability to keep focus, I think it was the best quality that Steve Jobs had. At least that's what I've heard from his peers. But it's damn difficult, because it means you're committed and you have conviction that what you're building matters, and that's what's going to change the world, not the shiny objects around.
Do you ever think about, so having focus, knowing your mission, how often do you revisit and make sure you're on the right path with the right mission, the right vision? Because there's chances that your original thesis gets invalidated, or what you're trying to do changes with the amount of tech and AI that's coming up. So how often do you revisit sort of your goal, mission, vision, and be like, hey, we have to modify this because, environment and industry has changed, so we have to adapt? Or are you so solid on your vision that you don't think anything's going to affect it for the next 3 to 5 years, or however far in the future you look?
So the vision usually stays the same, because it's very abstract, it's very vague, it's just how does the world change because you exist, and that can be very abstract, and that's how I like it to be. It needs to communicate feelings, and it needs to communicate what value add will you bring in the world, but at a very abstract level. Okay, that comes with some values, with some missions, with strategic directions that you have for your company. And what we do is we update this. We take a hard look at it once every year at a company level. Then in the tactical planning, for a quarterly planning, what we do is revise them again on a quarterly basis. But for me, on a personal level, I think there are times when I'm looking at it every once few days just to make sure that my actions align with the market and what the vision is. Sometimes it takes weeks. Like whenever something's not going right, I take a hard look at the vision and the results in the market and pivot.
Nice. I like that. Shifting gears a little bit to, you spend part of your year in Austin, you spend part of your year in Europe traveling. How do you manage client expectation, your employee expectations, and how do you think about sort of this cross-functional environment where you may not be co-located with the team? I don't know if you guys have an office or you're like
so we have an office.
Yeah,
we have an office. And it's amazing vibes whenever I'm there. So I'd say having a very strong team, trust within the team, and ability to communicate. I don't like, even when you're communicating, having the ability to communicate. I don't even know how to explain that, but sometimes when you talk to someone, if it's especially a team member that you're building something with, and you know each other maybe more than your spouses know each other from a business standpoint. So having that ability to communicate through a few words, maybe hundreds of thousands of ideas, I would say, just that makes it easier to be here and be aligned at the same time with what's happening
with your
there.
team there.
Would
you say, so how important is team culture for you, and how do you go about building sort of the culture within your organization?
So just like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And having some clear values that are shared by everyone, in especially when you're starting up. That's what we did when we were, I think, 18 people. We felt that we need some values because everyone had values, and we said, okay, but how are we going to pick them? Well, let's pick them together, and that's what we did. We had some workshops done over 2 days, and it wasn't that corporate. It just was, okay, what makes you, what feelings does this team give you? Like, what makes you feel like you're a part of a team? What excites you about being part of a team? Everyone shared their perspectives, and then we created some conglomerates around what were common themes, and we got to authenticity, unity, and vision in our case.
Nice.
And that's something that we feel and we communicate and we embody in everything we do when we work. And I think that's something that creates cohesion. That's something that creates communication through non-communication.
Nice. How big is your team now?
So right now we're 32.
Nice. All devs or?
No, we are also like devs, design, product managers.
Okay, nice. What's one common misconception that clients have about engaging an offshore team?
Well, it depends where the offshore teams are. Obviously, communication, especially. I think they aren't aware of the level of communication that offshore companies can provide. And after they do engage with us, they are surprised each time. And I'm happy that our team is able to generate that sort of impression in the world. Other than that, I would say having lower prices, but of course, like it needs to be lower. But not. I think you would have to look at value and have a good price ratio on the value that's given.
100%.
That's what I do whenever I have a vendor engage with me. And other misconceptions, I'm not
The reason I ask is, I also run a team out of India. I know a lot of folks who have teams in Mexico, South America, Argentina. Philippines is growing up a lot for like administrative work, design work, video editing work. A bunch of folks are tapping talent pools over there. I think the one thing that irritates me, or not even irritates, or just I have to have a lot of these conversations, when you come to me expecting a full enterprise build, but you want the price of someone who's on Upwork and quotes you $4,000, right? And I'm not saying don't go to the guy on Upwork. What I'm saying is, like you said, understand the value that you're getting and understand what that costs in terms of man hours. Forget about we're running a business, we need our own margins, because why would I run a business without any profit margins, right? But just sometimes the client expectation of going from, oh, here's what I think this worth is work, and just because you're offshore, it has to be 10% of the cost. But if they go onshore, they're willing to pay full price. And that, I think that's just lack of understanding and lack of knowing how to build product, knowing what goes into the process, right? But I've had so many of those conversations where the client will end up saying, but this guy said this much. I'm like, I'm happy for you to go with that person. Like, I don't want to compete. I'm not on a price race to zero, right? Go with that person. If you have a good experience, great. I'm not going to be like, no, I'll do it 10% cheaper than that guy. But there tends to be a lot of service owners who play a price game. And that's where I'm like, it just creates bad sentiment. Yeah. And then it affects everyone else in the space. But just a mini rant, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. Fortunately, in the last couple of years, since we've focused on that validation-driven approach and stuff like that, we didn't have that many conversations. But I do believe we've had less leads that, because I think we've qualified a bit better the sort of the conversations that we had regarding.
Yeah. I met someone in Austin, and I'm like, "What do you guys do?" He's like, "Yeah, we do dev work for clients." I was like, "We primarily focus on customers who've had a bad experience offshore."
Oh yeah.
And so they're coming onshore to hire us because whoever they were with messed their. And I'm like, the fact that that exists, I feel, is the problem with the space. But great, he's found a niche to target folks.
Yeah.
But I feel like that should never be an outcome. Like, there should be enough processes, communication standards in place where I feel like that can be avoided. But when you start playing who can be the cheapest in a situation, that's where you end up getting customers who are unhappy, service owners are happy. It's just a bad balance.
Well, you need to be aware of the budget that you have and the type of value that you can get. 100%. That's why, like, when I have a smaller budget on, especially in startups, like, I will expect, if I'm going to pay less, to receive a bit less. And if I am able to somehow squeeze more value as much as I can, while, of course, being respectable of the services that's being provided to me, I'm going to do that. But my expectations are clearly aligned to 100%. What I'm giving as value. Yeah,
100%. And I feel like that's where folks sometimes get it wrong, but again, part of the process, right?
Yeah.
What's your goal with Linify? What do you want to do over the next 3 to 5 years? How do you think about planning for your agency? And then follow-on question to that, let's say the $50K you spend towards internal builds, something pans out and like you find a lot of traction. How do you think about growing that? Do you spin off, like, how do you manage these two arms? Because again, there's the service versus the innovation. So how do you plan that out 3 to 5 years? How do you just think about big picture?
So to be honest, I've quite pivoted a bit in the last couple of months on what we're going to do there. So we've taken a more pragmatic approach to what will come. And we actually do have one product that's generating traction right now. And it might be that one that we're talking about, that 50K, whatever. So our vision is to be the place that transforms authentic ideas into successful and scalable products in the market. So being the best place to go, to a phase in which all you need to do is share it with the world, because you've created something that's of real value. That's why we've developed our validation process and continuously learning and doing more and more to be better at that. What I imagine is being the place where it doesn't matter whether you are funded or you are already coming in to receive services and paying for them. It is the best place if you have an authentic, original idea in mind and you want to transform that into pure value in the market. This Linify is the place where you're going to do that the fastest, the best, and with the highest rate of success. Now, that's the vision for Linify. First, we need to have some big success stories of our own, I would say, in order to be able to do that. And how it's going to look in terms of how the company operates, what it's going to look like. Is it a conglomerate? Is it whatever? I think that's going to need to pan out after we do validate this ourselves and achieve success. If not, that's why we're focusing on having excellent core services as well, so that we have the flexibility to exit if we want to do that at one point, to have the flexibility of knowing that we've already built a solid and performing business that has a value in the market already.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you... So from the point of view of you're building an agency, you have a product that's gaining traction, do you ever worry about multiples? And the reason I ask is a lot of consultancies, service agencies sell for 3 times revenue or 3 times EBITDA, depending on the market and the kind of agency. Because at the core of it, you're directly selling time, and there's a cap on how much time you can sell because you have only so many employees. And so the only way to scale there is get more employees, have more consulting hours to be able to sell, versus a tech product sells for 10x revenue and sells for 10x or whatever multiples, depends on market, right? But much greater than whatever a service agency does. How do you think about that dynamic? And the reason I ask is sometimes I talk to agency owners who are like, I'm struggling to go from 6 figures to 7 figures, but the exit in sight is also never $100 million exit, a $200 million exit, because a smaller agency can only sell for so much, right? How do you think about the balance between exiting a service agency versus exiting a tech product? Because you are innovating, right? So how do you stay focused on one and not get geared towards the other?
So regarding the focus part, having clear accountability internally on how much time we spend there, and being very cautious of the R&D budget, and like checking upon it each month with very strict rules on whether we raise it or not, and usually we don't raise it. That's one thing in terms of keeping focus. Now, on the multiples on the agency side, there are some things that you can do in order to increase the multiples as well. Having a strong brand that can sell at premium prices, that's what we're focusing on. So I wouldn't say that all, but most of our customers consider us expensive, but that's fine because we do have some of the top talent, and
you've also built up the credibility in the rep.
Exactly, and they are able to deliver and over-deliver most of the times. So that's something that we were able to build as a brand, and we're going to grow continuously. Having specific know-how that can be translated into intellectual property, that as well, and finding ways in which you can have productivized versions of your services. Nice. That's what we're experimenting with now.
Nice.
I'm not able to say right now that it's a passive income, but it does come with bigger margins.
Yeah. So 2 questions. On the productized side, I've watched a lot of folks to do it. There's some stuff I'm also trying to figure out on the productized side. A lot of folks I've talked to have said that the productized offering got them really low lead quality compared to what they would like for their business. Because the way they had productized, and maybe this is very dependent on what they were doing, but the productized offering made it so easy and simple that folks just entered their funnel and they wanted the service, but they were a really bad client to work with. They didn't truly understand the service. They wanted a lot more. Have you faced that yet, or you're still not? You haven't seen that?
What I've seen working multiple times, and even from companies from Romania, like UiPath, what they did was build a product-led business that comes with many implementation fees. And I think what they were able to do very well is business analysis that can create a description of a product that you can start selling. And even though you're not quite there yet, you're going to start building it once you sell.
Yeah.
And it's not really in their case, for example, it is the productized version of their RPA processes, because what they were doing, they were helping companies automate their businesses to software robots. Now what they did is, okay, since we're doing this, we have a framework on how we do that. this is our product. Now we're going to sell our product.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and we're going to help you use the product. And in this sense, if you come up from the start with this positioning, it's clear that it's a complex product, it's a value-add product, but it's going to be cheaper. There's also expertise in it. And all.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, I like that. You mentioned you've built up a company brand where you can demand a higher price point.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about company brand versus personal brand? And what do you focus on more? Do you focus on building your personal brand more, or do you focus on building Linify's company brand more?
Mm-hmm. So whenever it comes to my public persona, I almost constantly tied to Linify.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But I do believe that personal brand is important, especially in the services industry, because when you're buying services, you're buying from people. And you trust people. You don't necessarily trust the features and quality of a product. You trust the competency, the reliability, and how that person is able to deliver value. And it starts with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So building a strong personal brand, I think it's essential, and not only for the founders, but also doing that for all of your team members. Whenever there's an opportunity for them to build their personal brand, create that and push them so that they can grow even further. And I think that combined with a strong focus on how are you different as a brand, as a company brand, and aligning those two together nicely, that's what provides the use case and the opportunity to demand premium prices.
The reason I ask is I joined this agency group, and there was a call the other day where someone was asking personal brand versus company brand.
Mm-hmm.
And a 9-figure agency owner was saying, I only get 5% of deals because of my personal brand. But and he referenced all these agencies that have existed for 30 years before personal brand was a thing. Personal brand only became a really big thing over the last 3-4 years with boom in social media.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, these companies have existed. They're publicly traded. Some are private. They're doing 9 figures, 8 figures, $1 billion in revenue. There's no concept of personal brand there. And that was the first time I heard a big agency owner say, I would focus on building your company's brand and double down on your company's brand, because that allows you to garner a higher price point, allows you to build a brand, and the brand also lives on even if you want to step aside. Because if you tie it too much to a personal brand, then you're always going to be like semi-stuck in the business, or the business is just not going to grow. And just wanted your take on that, because I think that was the first time I heard someone say, focus on company brand more than personal brand.
It depends on the timing, I would say.
Yeah, 100%.
Like in the beginning, you need to focus on the personal brand because that's what you have, that's what you start with. And tie it from the beginning with your company brand. So it's easy for people then to it won't be about the person, it would be about the brand in time. Because like even if you look at McKinsey, they started with they had 2 co-founders.
The original partners.
And McKinsey, he was a well-respected and reputable professor, and he came up with some specific frameworks, and he was well known for the level of quality that he provides when it comes to management consulting. Now, that's what they build upon, but then, of course, the brand in itself became something.
Makes sense. I like that. I like that dynamic. Sweet.
Yeah.
I like to ask a couple sets of questions towards the end of every episode. What would you say is your support system?
My support system.
What allows you to keep going, live in 2 countries, manage remote team, manage clients, just be on the grind? What's your support system?
Okay, so if it's to look inside, it would be that fuel, that why, the fact that I really cannot see myself doing anything else than what I'm doing right now, and it's really important for me. And then if you look on the outside, is people, the people that are around me, and the trust that they have in me, and I don't know, the feelings that they give me whenever I'm speaking about what I'm doing, and they are giving me confidence that it's not even I'm not even scratching the surface. Nice. It's more to come. So my wife She's my biggest supporter, my biggest fan, and I'm hers. And we're partners in this life. And the fact that I have such a partner provides me much support. And then my family, of course, and my business associates, and the trust that we have between each other, that no matter what happens, we're gonna win together, and we're gonna win big.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. What's your startup tech stack? How do you run your company? And if you could walk me briefly through all the tools you use, from sales, client management, tech stack, coding, whatever you want to cover.
Okay, so for project management, we do work with the Atlassian suite, so Jira, Confluence.
Nice.
For communication, we do Slack. That's something that, I don't know, I just love their UX and the way they've managed to transform how you communicate internally. For sales, we use HubSpot.
Okay.
And right now, we are playing with and experimenting with different outbound solutions like Instantly, the Growth Machine, Apollo AI for prospect. Like right now, we haven't found the tech stack yet.
Okay.
Hopefully, we have it by the end of the next quarter.
Okay.
And in terms of how we develop products, we mostly use Figma for rapid prototyping and Adobe Creative Cloud. And for building products, we are focused on TypeScript and Python.
Nice.
Yeah. So
you use Python backends mostly, or okay, nice.
Yeah, Node.js and Python.
Okay.
Yeah.
Django Flask framework or
Django. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Pretty cool. What are 3 resources that you'd recommend to someone listening? And this could be whatever kind of resource. And if you want to focus on the topic, great. If not,
yeah, of course. So, I'd recommend one book that I enjoy. There are a lot of books, but I'm just gonna go with the most recent one that I listened to actually, and it's Elon Musk's biography that you can hear on Audible. It's just amazing. The sheer confidence and mental power that he's been able to go through, I think that can inspire any founder that they can achieve anything if they set their mind to, and they really believe in it, and they're going to give it their all to do it. Other than that, resources like listening to podcasts like yours, that's something that I would recommend. Also the All In podcast, if they want to get a bit in touch with what's happening in the VC world, startup world, tech world. And from what perspective? Because you asked me.
No, so if you want to focus on validation, GTM, go to market, that also works. If you want to be more generic, that's also fine. If there's anything that comes to mind that, if you're thinking about idea validation,
communities, communities. Yeah, you need to be part. Like wherever you're living, if you're in Austin, go and be part of the communities of startups that exist out there. Like there's Fiesta, there's AVA. There are many communities.
Nice, sweet. I do this segment in every episode where I've asked a previous guest for a question. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you their question, and then I'll ask you for a question as well for whoever my next guest is.
Okay, sounds good.
So your question is, what was the exact time or moment where you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
It's interesting because when I was in high school, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I actually went to law school and also became a lawyer. But I think I always knew in a sense. I don't know, like when I was little, I used to sell things with my parents used to sell stuff, clothes and such back home in Romania. And I would go and sell, those little diskette games that you would play for?
Yeah. Game Boy, Nintendo kind of.
Yeah. I used to sell those there. And I don't know, it felt like that's something that I like doing just because it provides the independence and autonomy and being able to communicate and being able to sell something.
Do you remember your first sale?
Oh yeah, it was hard. It was hard in the sense that I had to convince why it's actually really valuable to, and it was, but I had to understand their needs. I had to understand why it makes sense for them to buy and why it will make their life better.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. What's your question for a future guest?
Yeah, for a future guest. What are you most excited about? What technology are you most excited about that will take shape in 10 years from now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer?
No. I would have. I had to think about it. Do you want me to think about it? Right?
No. I'm just curious. Because the last guest who asked you the question, he's like Feb 22, 2018 was the day I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
And why? So, why was it?
He was built. I knew him from UT. Mm-hmm. He was building. He's building a drone company right now for agricultural drones, but he remembers the day where someone handed them a 30K check, 20K check for one of the drones they have made. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that was the moment where I knew that, okay, this can be a thing. I like this. I want to do this. Mm-hmm. I want to build my own company. Because up until then, they'd only made a couple $100 here and there. But they had made a drone. They went to a drone show and someone handed them a check at the show. Like, I'm going to take this home. And that was like enough validation. He's like, that was the day I knew that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I build this and it works.
That first check hits differently.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Like the first 1K that we invoiced, I will remember them more than any other invoice that I was able to issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. I like that. But yeah, where can listeners find you? What do you want to plug? What can we link for you in the description?
So LinkedIn is where I share most of my stuff and what I do. Also on Instagram, but that's more like not necessarily personal, but stuff that
less business, more
has to
fun.
do more with hobbies and what I like in life, philosophy, stuff like that. And the podcast, A Day in the Future.
Nice. And we'll link everything.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Are you going to enjoy Europe over the next couple, 3 months, 4 months?
Looking forward the next weekend in Greece. Yeah.
Nice. Sweet. But we'll touch base when you're back. But thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks.